right, why don't we get started? Thank you all so much for joining today and welcome. This is going to be an amazing session. We have amazing people both joining as well as our speakers are phenomenal. And just to get us started, WITI, as you know, is about innovation, inspiration, and inclusivity, and that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. In addition, we'll be talking about drones and robots and wearables and software that powers product innovation. So we got a lot to cover today. But first, let me just talk to you a little bit about WITI in case you are not familiar. WITI stands for Women in Technology International. We are a global organization. Carolyn Clayton started WITI about 30 plus years ago. Today we have over 60 networks, 300 corporate partners, and over 150,000 members. And some of you are members that I see here today. Also, please use the chat box to introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn profiles. Please tell us which city you're coming from. And as we get into the conversation, please feel free to provide your insight, ask us questions. And I'm going to ask the speakers if you also want to keep an eye on the chat. And if there's a question that I don't see or you'd want to answer, just let me know. And again, I hope you all will stay on video so we can see you. And if you have dogs and cats showing up, that's okay. No problem there. David, before I start, anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. You know, we have some great virtual events. I know I've seen many of you on, so keep an eye on witi.com/events. We'll get you to all the current things. We're trying to make the information easier to see and redesigning some of our CMS. So bear with us until that happens. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Sharon, John, Zach, Jeanette, welcome, welcome. This is going to be an amazing show. Thanks so much for being here. So why don't we get started? If I could ask each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us about you, anything you'd want to share about your company, and please do share something fun and interesting about you. So with that, Sharon, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sharon Rossmark. I'm the CEO of Women in Drones. We are not only a drone flight services provider, but we also feature women in the industry from around the globe who are disrupting, innovating, and shaping the future of the industry.
Guys, hold on. I'm sorry, Sharon. Can you guys all mute
I got it. I got her, Parna. I'm moderating.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry, Sharon. Go ahead.
That's okay. So in addition to being a drone flight services provider, we feature women from around the globe who are disrupting, innovating, and shaping the future of the drone industry. One interesting fact about me is that I'm actually a licensed commercial FAA certified drone pilot, which means I can fly professionally and get paid for my services, fly a drone and get paid for my services. Thank you.
Cool.
Very cool. Thank you. John?
I am John Hirschtick. I'm head of the Software as a Service, or SaaS, business at PTC, headquartered in the Boston area where I live. And I've spent my career building software tools for product development, CAD, computer-aided design, and related tools for managing data simulation. I've worked on several generations of that technology. I was previously the founder and CEO of SolidWorks and founder and CEO of Onshape, and PTC acquired Onshape. I work with people who build the future of manufactured goods. Those are my customers. And interesting fact about me is I used to be on the MIT blackjack team, and I played professional blackjack for a while.
Cool. If you have time, we'll ask him to elaborate on that.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Jeanette, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Numbers. I'm an industrial designer by trade. I run a design and engineering agency outside of Boston, actually in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm one of John's customers, actually, as he described it. So great to meet you here. So what we do every day is design and develop products for robotics, for drones, for consumer goods. A lot of our stuff has been in the Apple Store and Best Buy and hospitals. So pretty broad range of experience on different kinds of products. Fun fact about me. Wow. Okay, let's see. I'm a transplant to the New England area. I'm from Ohio originally, but when I moved here, I learned that sailing was a pretty exciting, pretty cool thing. So I'm a new sailor. So I'm learning all of the lingo and the foreign language that really sailing is all about. So
Excellent. Thank you. Zach?
thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Zach Dydek. I'm the CTO at Vecna Robotics. Been interested in robotics since I guess I was 10 years old or so. I got my PhD in 2010 from MIT and then moved on to Vecna Robotics, where I've been for the last decade or so. We build software that is changing the way that work is done, particularly in warehouses and manufacturing. So that includes taking equipment that's manually operated now and turning them into robots that can move things around in warehouses, and also coordinating how people and robots and not just Vecna robots, but other people's robots are going to work together in a sort of connected warehouse of the future. And I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And I guess for my interesting personal tidbit, if you're looking closely at my background, maybe you can tell, but Raphael is my favorite Ninja Turtle.
I was wondering what that is.
Yeah, you have to look closely. But yeah, if anyone wants to change my mind about that, we can bring that up later.
All right, that is very cool.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And I'm Parna. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the VP of Brand Marketing for WITI, and I work with David and the rest of the WITI team. Thank you all again for being here. Thank you, the speakers. All right, so let's get started. Sharon, I'm gonna call on you to kick us off. I love the picture of drones in the background. So one of the things that maybe just a perception is that when we talk about drones, we often think about drones as, something for hobbyists, or kids might be playing with it, or it could be the drones, the military drones that are doing surveillance work. Tell us a little bit about the world of drones, and did the whole the COVID-19, the pandemic, did that have any impact in terms of application, usage? Just curious. So educate us about drones.
Absolutely. So while drones, as you mentioned, have been around for quite some time, mostly in the military sense, over the last few years, drones have really emerged as an application to help businesses not only improve efficiencies, but safety from an employee standpoint. And to your point about, or your inquiry about drones during the pandemic, it's actually increased our business. Because if you think about it, given the environment of where we are with quarantine and so forth, drones have the capability of doing things that humans can't do. So I'll give you one example that our audience may not be familiar with is deliveries of drones. Over the last few years, it's been teased in the media. In fact, Amazon came out early on and talked about drone delivery. So what you may not know, that drone delivery testing has actually been occurring in several markets over the last couple of years, not only here in the United States, but as well as in other countries. And there's numerous examples in the last year of how drones have helped humans. And I'll give you one great example, and then I'll give you one give you a couple of them that have occurred during the pandemic. But drones have been used most recently last year to move, to airlift a kidney from to an emergency transplant situation from one hospital to another, something that from a time standpoint, you would think that it wouldn't take that long just going to a local hospital, but actually they were able to deliver it within 10 minutes and actually save someone's life doing that. But more recently, an example includes delivery of medications by a major drugstore chain to a senior community in Florida, because as you know, a lot of those communities were on lockdown or are still on lockdown. And so they started testing, delivering their medications to them from the drugstore to those communities via drone. And just a few weeks ago in Virginia, they tested delivery of library books to children who are locked down in quarantine. So those are just a couple of examples that are in play right now. And just to kind of give you a feel that those examples are by companies such as UPS and FedEx, who are leading the way because they're already good at logistics. So they're partnering with the FAA and with these major corporations, and they're figuring out more of how to integrate drones into delivery logistics. So that whole concept of delivery by drone is soon in our future.
Wow, very, very cool. Thank you. So while we are talking about applications, let me go to John. John, COVID-19, I believe, has put the innovators to the test, both in terms of speed and agility as they were creating life-saving products. Do you want to share some examples of technologies or companies that had to pivot and also deliver products very quickly to help save lives?
Sure. Well, we're seeing, first of all, across our customer base, product developers in general, we're seeing a lot more, I'll say, speed, agility, change, improvisation than we've ever seen. And I think companies are learning to work faster and change faster than they really, in some cases, knew they could. In pivots related to saving lives, I mean, we have a program we started, a COVID community response program at Onshape, where we said, look, if you're working on a project for the community, in COVID response, we'll give you our system, access to our system at no charge, but beyond that, we'll give you support services too. We'll sit down and help you figure out how to organize, use the tools, and in some cases, help you with complementary tools that we don't even make, facilitating that, just kind of a white glove service kind of thing. And we've done that with dozens and dozens of projects. I don't know if it's 100, but it's probably closer to 100 than 10 or 20 different projects, where each project might have anywhere from 2 to 200 users involved. So quite a few people and projects, and we're proud of that. Many of those relate to building equipment like ventilators and PPE. And in many cases, they're companies, organizations that didn't do that at all. Like, for instance, we have a company that is a startup making a product for the medical industry. And they pivoted, nothing to do with COVID or anything, and they pivoted to fast engineer a ventilator. That was very exciting. A project then beyond support for the community in general, we got very personally involved, several of us, in a project called masks.on.org. You can look it up, or maybe Parna can post the URL, which was a program to build a very effective PPE system, medical mask system, based on a snorkeling swimming mask that we then took off the snorkel and put on a medical grade filtering. Lots of projects using that strategy around the world. We saw the opportunity. The problem with these quick projects is sometimes they're offering medical equipment without any guidance on appropriate testing and quality control. We knew that we didn't have time to do the kind of formal certification one would do with the FDA, but we brought in volunteers who understood those processes, and we made every effort under tight time to test and validate. Now, we note with huge warning labels, not FDA certified, don't use unless you have such things. But the FDA did come out with guidance on it. That's a whole other subject. Anyway, so what have we learned in these things? We've learned that, like I said, people can work faster than they ever did before. We learned that the processes of, I think, software development and rapid agility matter. We learned that it's great to do more virtually with tools like ours that build, as some of my fellow panelists well know, let you build virtual models of hardware, but you still need physical models too. You still need to hold parts in hand and feel things and see things and hold props. In fact, I'll go when there's a break here. I'll go grab one of the prototype mask systems that I have here at home, and so that that's the experience we've seen. Is if people, cloud tools are a must. Tools that manage rapid change, whether in software, something like GitHub that's widely used, or we found a lot of value in our data management tools that brings concepts like branching and merging to people. Remote access and cloud tools, look what we're doing now, are the winner in COVID. And it sort of, to me, felt like it's like a turnover in a football game where before COVID, people thought that, you know, on-prem systems were more reliable and stable. And now once COVID and cloud systems, well, what happens, you know, and now it's the opposite. Cloud is very stable, reliable, and the on-prem systems are causing customers a lot of headaches. So those are some of the observations we've had. Net, we're honored and excited to be part of our community of customers who are doing so many projects in support of COVID response.
Awesome. No, those are really, really great examples. And I think, you know, this is also an example of technology for good. It's not just technology for technology's sake, but it's literally, you know, products that saving lives and keeping the first responders safe and so on. So those are very, very exciting. Let's move to robots. So Zach, the warehouse robot market is it's predicted to be close to, I think, like 26 billion or so. That was a prediction even before COVID hit. What are you seeing in the market? Has the pandemic impacted automated products like the warehouse robots?
It has, yeah, significantly. You know, early on in the pandemic, you know, maybe late March, early April, we were very relieved at Vecna Robotics that we had finished our Series B venture capital funding because we were worried that, you know, venture capital was just going to dry up across the board, and it was going to be a, you know, huge challenge to raise any money. But actually, what we've seen, you know, over the last months, despite venture capital, you know, going down across the board, we're still seeing a lot of interest in warehouse automation specifically, and you know, the reasons, you know, should be pretty clear. You know, consumer patterns have changed. A lot of people buying more online, and those changes, you know, part of them will be permanent. So there's going to be more demand, you know, more consumer expectation for faster, you know, more reliable delivery of all the things that they're ordering online. And ultimately, when you talk to our customers and they're talking about automation, they're not concerned about cost as a driver, that robots are cheaper than people, you know, for example, and that's not their decision making. Their decision making is around, you know, their ability to handle the load that they have. There aren't enough people to work these jobs. They can't hire people for these jobs, and they need automation to meet the needs of their customers and to stay competitive. So there's still a huge appetite for automation and robotics, specifically around warehouses, and we're lucky and excited to be in the position that we are, to be able to take advantage of it. You know, obviously would prefer to not have a pandemic to be the cause of that, but you know, we are fortunate as a company about the timing of that.
Right. No, thank you for that. Jeanette, obviously you when you introduced yourself, you talked a lot about the wearable industry, which is, we all love it, right? But during the pandemic, did you have to pivot your business, or was the wearable market still a good place to be during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think for the sake of this call, I'll try to keep it mostly about the wearable, and then I can touch on really, you know, something more personal where we basically turned our whole business upside down to address something on the COVID side. But I wanted to point out, take the opportunity with this crowd, this women in technology crowd, to point out that wearables, you know, it's something you're putting on your body. It's a very intimate place, and women's bodies are very different than men's. So we have a real opportunity, and as designers and engineers, to really make sure that we're designing for both populations in this case. So there's so many times where historically medical devices and products meant for the collective population have been only tested or only designed for men. And in fact, you know, if you've seen the news, even on drug testing, women weren't even included in clinical trials for drug testing like 10 years ago. So, you know, I'm bringing that up to this crowd to hopefully rally us all around being aware and taking the opportunity in a pandemic when everything is upside down and the rules are gone and the stakeholders are different and the gates are different, to take that opportunity and really stand up for yourself and, you know, make it known that we have voices, we all have equal voices, and we really need to use the diverse pool of all of our experiences to design things for everyone.
Good
So
point.
in the pandemic, that's really what's come to light the most to me, is the rules are completely different. In fact, there are maybe less rules and less of the traditional sort of gatekeepers on things that, you know, it's really a great time to be innovating and making sure all voices are heard. So that's what I would say about wearables. So, you know, if you're going to put something on your body, make sure it has a space for breasts. That is what I will leave on the table here.
Awesome. So obviously we talked a lot about how the pandemic has generated and fostered more innovation. Where do you see the innovation economy going next? You know, we've all, you know, as John was saying, we've created products where normally they would take months, we've delivered in like 3 to 4 weeks. That's obviously, it appears that the product development / innovation industry is changing. But where is it going next? So I'm going to open this up to you guys can answer, whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I want to just give a short answer to that, which is to say rapid innovation is fantastic, but as leaders, we do need to make sure we're still keeping an eye on safety and efficacy. So when you have all of this energy and people excited to create change and bring innovation, as leaders, as we all are leaders here, it's good to just have those boundaries to do the checks and balances to make sure we're still being safe and effective. So speed to market is great, but let's make sure we're not hurting people.
Total sense. Anybody else want to respond to that? Zach, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I guess one kind of interesting thing that's come out of it for us is we've had to innovate our product in some different directions. For example, when we deploy new robots into a facility, previously we would, you know, send a team of technicians, you know, to help set everything up and, you know, get everything working right. But lately we've moved to offering remote deployments where we don't send anyone. We send the robots and they roll off the truck, and we do all those activities remotely, which has required, you know, some technological advancements on our side, and ultimately I think they're going to be, you know, good things for the products, you know, even after travel restrictions are lifted. So that's a very interesting thing. To follow up on what Jeanette said about safety, you know, that's obviously at the forefront of our minds because our robots weigh 5,000 pounds and they move around quickly in a warehouse with people. So, you know, there are some aspects of our development that haven't accelerated and won't accelerate, but there are other things that can, and we are pushing on those boundaries. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be
for sure.
an innovator.
John, I've heard you talk about the golden age of innovation. Want to share your thoughts?
Oh yeah, and actually before I do, I just want to reflect on something Zach said. He points out something I like to think about, and is it's not just about the white collar kind of office worker. I don't know if white collar is a term anymore, but the kind of those of us who can easily work remote, which I put myself in that category. You know, we're getting all this, you know, ability to, okay, with certain amount of pain, but still we can have our meetings with Zoom. We can do our work. If you're largely a software developer, there's a lot of jobs in the economy that can be done this way. Then there are those that can't be done this way. Like we know there's service workers and things. But then the factory floor worker, you know, there's a sort of middle ground here where it's important that we arm them with tools to work remotely. Like you may need more than a tool like Zoom. What we're seeing is demand for products like our augmented reality products at PTC. We also make, besides the CAD and the tools, we have augmented reality, and talking to some other people in the augmented reality business about how they're either seeing their products used in more use cases or developing new solutions that are designed to take people whose job with just Zoom can't be really done remotely, but with perhaps with adding in AR, IoT tools can be done better. An example of that, not pitching our product, but we make this thing called Chalk, which lets you mark up in 3D. So you could have like a video call. It feels like a FaceTime call where I can annotate my physical world. So if I held up an object, you know, if I was looking at a piece of machinery, I could draw an annotation. It sticks in 3D, and you can draw also. You can say, no, John, not that valve, this one over here. And that product has gone skyrocket in use during COVID, and people are like calling us and saying, wow, everything's about reducing on-site visits. To Zach's point, what new tools can we build that will reduce the need? And that's an example of one of many things. And there's other people in the AR business doing those things. Then back to what Parna was saying about golden age of innovation. Personally, for our customers, we have some customers that are going out of business, and it's a tragedy to see that. Then we have others, though, who share with me something I've come to believe in, that when we get to the other side of the worst part of COVID, and someday we will be on the other side of this, I think there's going to be enormous opportunities for innovation and for entrepreneurship, and that so many things in the world are going to be changing, you know, in ways that's hard to predict, but where there's change, there's opportunity. Now, right now, there's a tailwind of change and this huge headwind of a terrible economy in many sectors, although certain sectors are going crazy with opportunity, you know, obviously, depending on where you are. You know, if you're making protective gear for hospitals, that business is going pretty well these days, I imagine. So the general idea I want to make, the general point I want to make is, if you're an entrepreneur or product developer or an innovator, I think there's going to be great days ahead. I think after this horrible, tough period, it's going to be so hard on so many people. The moment will come where, for innovators, there will be incredible opportunity as so many things in our world restructure in new ways. And that's truly my belief. I guess I'm also an optimist, but entrepreneurs have to be a little bit of an optimist too.
Sure. Thank you for that. Sharon, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, you know, from a drone standpoint, I agree wholeheartedly with what John has said. And when I think about, you know, Zach with the warehousing, you know, drones are intimately involved there. And then Jeanette brought up a point that I probably could have mentioned earlier, which was around the testing. One of the things that we've done in pivoting was to incorporate offering to client ability to test products from a woman's standpoint, because so many of the, you know, the controllers and everything that's involved, the tools and the products are all designed for men or men's-sized hands and so forth. But to your question, Parna, you know, our business is heavily regulated for a good reason. It's by the FAA. And so that regulatory infrastructure is already being developed. But the things that will allow us to do to really to move forward with the integration of drones into our lives are things like flight over people. Right now, we legally cannot fly over people. night operations. There's limitations on who can fly. You have to get a special waiver from the FAA and have certain kind of lights on your drone. Beyond visual line of sight, right now we have to maintain a visual eye on the drone unaided. So you can wear glasses, but you can't use binoculars. And then there's this big controversy within the industry called remote ID. Because remote ID would allow you to understand or know who is flying that drone. It's almost like a virtual license plate for a drone. Because right now drones are too small to show up on the FAA radar. And so that's an issue and a concern. And so as they develop the technology, which is under development, remote ID will allow public safety officials or others to know whose drone that is. So when you can't see the pilot, you can see the drone. By having a tool, you can identify who it is. And then this huge project called unmanned traffic management, or we refer to it as urban traffic management, which is basically how do you have all these various size aircrafts, be it passenger planes, drones, helicopters, anyone else that's flying a manned aircraft, have the traffic under command or in control. Just like I always like to use the example when I'm talking to public audiences like yourself, is that once upon a time we figured out how to have horse and buggies and bicycles and cars and motorcycles and buses all on the same road. Well, we'll do the same thing in the sky, and they're very close to figuring out. There's several theories out there, but I know you go downtown Chicago now, there's a lane for bikes with its own stoplight. There's a lane for buses. There's a lanes for regular passenger vehicles, and it can be very confusing. Well, just imagine having all this in the same sky, because when you lift off the ground flying a drone, you're flying in the national airspace. So the innovation opportunities are huge, and to what my peers here on the panel have talked about and what they're developing, we welcome it all, because the pieces that we need to really take off, not to use a pun, but to really take off, or the things that they're designing for us.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I have to add my 2 cents to designing for women. I actually wrote about it in one of my Forbes article. But something as small as, when you're doing these live panels, they'll have the bar stools for the speakers to sit on. They don't take into account people like me who are short. So you literally, you've got to jump up to sit on those bar stools. And when you're sitting, you got your legs dangling. It's like, who's designing these bar stools? So yes, I think that this is where the whole inclusivity and innovation comes in, right?
Right.
But before we go there, let me ask this question about, we are all talking about innovation, but now that we are all working remotely, the world of, it's like literally digital right now, right? I mean, obviously we are now going back to work and so on, but I think the world is not going backwards anymore. Like, we are all used to remote working. We are used to remote innovation. So what message would you give to students or engineers who are getting ready to enter this new world that's hyper-connected? Any of you can start on that? John, do you want to answer that or get us started?
Sorry. So what advice can I give to students who are entering the hyper-connected world?
Yeah, or from an education standpoint, are there any mentoring that needs to be done that's additional to what they were studying?
Yeah, well, I have a few comments about education. First of all, I wanted to talk about the impact of somewhere today on the impact of COVID on education, which has been profound, of course, in education in general. But for STEM education and engineering education, my comments earlier about holding product in hand hardware, we're seeing some good things and some not so good things. The good thing is that it's forced STEM educators to push the technology and make it more accessible. Gone are the, do it in the lab. And it's forced people to say, okay, I'm setting up so you can do it at home. For the segment of the community that has computing resources at home. And not everyone does, and that's another problem. But that's, I think, good. I think that's a good thing. But we still have to teach people hands-on hardware approaches, and that's going to have to suffer a bit in this environment. People still need to learn to make and work with hardware. In the connected world, students are forced to learn to use remote collaboration tools to do engineering, and things that we would have said, oh, there's no way a design team can really do a design without seeing each other. Well, students are proving wrong, and there's many competitions that have gone to virtual design. And as I've noted, they're not getting the hardware benefit, but they are working effectively as teams, doing some amazingly complex projects in short time that even me, as someone whose whole life is watching people use these tools, I'm stunned by what I'm seeing in high school level first robotics leagues that have their season canceled, have done some virtual events. College students have done virtual events. So that's cool. I think the student of today, obviously, it's no news to them that they have to master remote collaboration. There were no students who were puzzled about the use of Zoom or something. Only the teachers were. You know what I mean? Like, the students all know, my kids all know how to use that stuff. They're collaborating. They do global collaboration every day in video games. They're used to that. So, but I think the world, first of all, the trends I see in engineering education is there's no more such thing as a mechanical engineer anyway. Like, no matter what, I don't know if Zach would agree or Jeanette, if you're hiring engineers, there's no one who's straight mechanical anymore. I think engineers who are primarily mechanical have to know software, have to know something about electronics, have to know something about even bio or some aspect of bio and medical. And I think they all are coming out with that. I think the knowledge of software is not just about how to build software, but what you learn from building software that you can apply to building hardware. In terms of the software industry has evolved to better processes, in my opinion, for agility and the culture of version tracking is much better run. Some of that's the nature of the tools. Some of it's the process and culture, the whole idea of agile development and fast iteration and so forth. I think that those principles and things are things that people are learning. Also, the students have to learn how to learn, because the technologies they're learning now are getting obsoleted at an ever faster rate. And so, students have to be equipped to say, gee, the stuff that I used in working on these projects in college, well, I know that in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to have to learn some new ideas. I'm going to, no longer do you learn a programming language and say, that's going to arm me to go forward. You learn that I can learn new programming languages when I need to, and I can learn how to think about structuring code. Learning to use a particular 3D printer isn't worth much, because in a couple of years there'll be new processes. Learning to think about new manufacturing techniques is worth more than ever, because in my opinion there are more coming. I see what our customers are building and so forth. So those are some of the thoughts I'd have for the world of education that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm going to let you guys answer, but Phyllis, thank you so much for asking the question. I believe the panelists are actually answering your question around how do you keep the STEM pipeline full. So just wanted you guys to know that was one of the questions. So thanks for that question. So as you guys answer, maybe as you respond to my original question, maybe you can build the STEM question and the answer to that as well. Yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll be happy to answer both questions. So, from my standpoint, or what I would probably say I want the audience to take away, is that drones are increasingly becoming a part of STEM education in the classroom, even remotely. A lot of our drone companies that are offering drone education have converted it to online. And what we're seeing is that it helps kids not only understand the physics of how an aircraft works, but the parts, but then also how to repair them, because not everyone wants to be an engineer, not everyone wants to be a scientist, and drones fall into all of the initials associated with STEM and even STEAM, but it exposes them to the learning carries over into cognitive development, for example. They learn that, especially the young kids, I've seen them as young as 5. We've done training sessions for them, because we're a supporter of fueling that pipeline to the question that was asked, because it's a fun way to help kids develop problem solving and critical thinking skills. And even equally as important is teamwork. Because you can't fly a drone alone, and just like you can't fly an airplane alone, I mean, you can, but it's teamwork. Whether you're talking to the FAA controller or with the drone, you may have a spotter, what we refer to as someone to help you with the visual line of sight. It's all important that kids learn the various aspects. So not only the STEM initials, but the cognitive thinking, the ability to have critical thinking, or cognitive development, I should say, and the critical thinking skills are all part of that. And we're starting as young as 5. We introduce them to the concepts. We have children's books that feature girls learning about drones, loving drones, flying drones, inquiring about how drones are used in various scenarios. So it's all part about not only having examples, but then giving them a situation and then letting them know it's not about just becoming a drone pilot. Yeah, there are so many other opportunities, and it can easily launch them into other sectors of aviation for career opportunities.
Really,
Sharon,
really good point.
I'd love to build on what you're describing there in terms of how we have an opportunity right now to even define what is STEM, what is engineering. I think traditionally it's been very rote learning, calculus, and all these sort of mechanical, I like to take apart engines, or I'm good at math, and that means I'm going to be an engineer. Well, I think that we have an opportunity to change that and look at things that maybe are traditionally girl activities that are still very powerful cognitive traits, like knitting or sewing, or that take that planning, take those, the same kind of complex thinking, but have traditionally not been thought as engineering qualities, and celebrating those as just as valuable in an engineering sense. So those are the things I'm excited about from a STEM perspective, is whether that's coming from a digital side or not, I'm not sure, but I just think, again, like, everything's upside down, so let's take the opportunity to shake it up and celebrate some different things.
Yeah, I think you make a really, really good point. So from me personally, so I'm from India, so that's where my education was. And I obviously am not a STEM student because I was so scared about math and science, because exactly what you said, it's by rote. There was no application, so how am I using the theorem, or what does this formula mean? And so when I came here and I saw how the education system is so different, and I was like, I wish that's how people taught me, then maybe I would have been an engineer, right? Of course, I enjoy working with all of you, but I think, that it's so important right in the beginning is to teach students or teach the kids, math is not that scary, or these are the applications from cooking to time to what have you. And that was the biggest thing that I found was, when I said, I wish that's how my education was. But yeah, that's a really good point. So Zach, as you're talking about careers, let me ask you, at Vecna, when you are hiring your engineers or your employees, what do you look for them during the interview process?
It's a good question. Primarily, what we look for, beyond all the technical stuff, I mean, they have to be smart. They have to know the right things, but a lot of people meet those qualifications. The interesting thing for me typically is passion. Do they love what they do? For us, it's robots, and there are a lot of people who love robots. But have they been working on projects on the side? Even everyone's busy with classes and everything, but is there something in their basement that they're tinkering around with, late at night? And the culture fit is the other big thing that I look for. Even more important in a lot of cases than having particular skills or particular knowledge. Are they someone who will fit in well with our company culture? We're still a small, a smallish company. And so that's obviously very important for us. And then we can do a lot of learning, after we bring people in. So those are probably the two biggest ones for me.
Yeah, and you're also, I think, hosting today, right? Women in Robotics? That's really cool.
We are. Yeah, we have another another event this evening about that. So people who are interested in that, we can send out the details. And if you want to do a double header, then there's an opportunity to join that as well later.
For sure. No, thank you for that. And speaking about diversity, John, you're a tech pioneer, and you've built and sold companies and built teams and all the good stuff. When you're building an innovation team, do you look for diversity? Do you think diversity is important when you're building, whether it's your team to grow the company or even from a product standpoint? Just curious.
Yes, I think diversity is not just a good thing from a social justice standpoint, but it's a good thing for innovation, because the more points of view you get in the team, the more different backgrounds, the more I think the more creative you are, really, really simply, in fact, it's just obvious. It might be exponential with the number of different backgrounds you have, really. Also, as has been brought up several times today, design has to take into account more than ever an incredible range of diversity, whether it's the ones that were mentioned, women and men, or now, of course, gender neutral, and various other seeing products designed for that community in particular. That's a relatively more recently visible thing. We have height and weight and economic and social, and there's so many dimensions to it in the consumer, and even for non-consumer products, as somebody pointed out, maybe Sharon, thinking about who is operating the product, who's servicing it, and so forth. But anyway, I think that diversity would be wonderful to see in the teams. I think that the lesson I've learned recently is, we're not doing a good enough job. We talk about it, but we don't do it enough. We certainly, in my community, I'm in that very large swatch of our community that certainly would have said the right things before and said, we have a goal to improve it. And it's all the things that one of the things about being around perhaps with a longer career than some of the people. So I remember when the issue was women, and we said the same thing, and nothing happened until we did things, and I think we have to do more. We have to look harder for the candidates. And what I think I've been doing more recently is trying to make sure I have conversations with our Black employees. In particular, I realized I didn't know them. I didn't talk to them about how they felt. And opening up and talking to them and building them into my network is one of many steps to do more than just sit in an HR recruiting meeting and say, yeah, let's improve the numbers of diverse candidates. It has to be more, and we have to get to know them, and we can try as we might to improve our implicit biases. But the only way I emphasize to my team, one of the really necessary ingredients is we got to get out and talk to them. And so, but yes, it's going to be obviously essential for us to build the best products we can and draw from the best talent pool we can too.
Right. Thank you. Sharon and Jeanette, do you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I just mentioned in the chat, we need, I'll be brief, but it's always a grand idea to want a diverse employee set, but you need support to get them through. And that goes from my point of view. We work with a lot of clients, and so there's a power structure there already that can be intimidating. And if you're already on a minority level, you don't know where you are, and you're looking to your mentors to kind of figure out how that works. And without good modeling and good mentorship and support, they're just going to be lost. Like they have no role models.
Right. There's a question from Holly. Do you find yourself employing empathy more in your conversations with minority employees and colleagues? Thanks for the question, Holly. Anybody want to take that? Tough question, huh?
Absolutely.
As a company, I mean, we have, and we're small, under 15 employees, but we constantly do quarterly, if not more, checks, and especially recently with BLM, and we've actually taken the stand of working on ourselves internally before we go out. So in terms of an empathetic point of view to my own team, and yes, definitely.
Makes sense.
And kind of a similar train of events at Vecna. We've kicked off a diversity committee that's taking a look at all the policies and practices that we have within our company to see if there's any unintentional bias or exclusiveness there. Not just applying to race and gender identity, but also sexual orientation, religion, ability. If there's anything there that's creating exclusivity where shouldn't be there, then we want to try to discover that. So surveys like what Jeanette mentioned, going out to the whole team and trying to understand those, so we can try to do what we can to make progress in that area.
Right. Thank you. Why don't we take one more question?
Hey, Parna, let me just chime in, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
of course. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just, because since I'm I think the only racial minority on the panel here, I like to just offer a few tips around creating a diverse workforce as you look to what do you need to do. And I think my colleagues on the panel here have touched upon some of it, but I would offer 3 points. One, take a look at the facts. There was a recent study by McKinsey Consulting Company, which points out that diverse and inclusive companies are likely to make better and bolder decisions. And I think, John, you touched upon that, if they're more diverse. And then also, more diverse teams generally outperform less diverse competitors. So that's one. The second thing is, you're not going to see change unless it's intentional. And I think, again, my colleagues touched upon that, meaning you have to make it a priority for your organization, and it starts at the top. And if you have a board of directors, it starts with them also. So there has to be some consistency in your approach and your messaging. And then the third and final piece that I would offer is that take a look, and I think someone said this, take a look, an honest look at your recruiting and hiring practices. You must look beyond your traditional recruiting sources. And if you're using a search firm, you must require the search firm to come up with a diverse slate of candidates. And that even includes for your board of directors. So, since this isn't really the topic for our session, I just wanted to throw that in, because I think a lot of times people aren't sure where to start or what to do. So just start with those 3 as your basis and build from there.
Good point. Thank you. So I'm going to ask all of you to add, let's look at the one tip that you want to give to somebody who is looking to either enter the innovation economy or is already an innovator looking to create the next big thing. John, you want to start us out there?
One tip, I'd say think about and look for the many opportunities that will be created post-COVID. Pretty obvious, but a lot of industries and things in our world are going to be being rethought. And when the economy comes back, look around for those opportunities. Good
tip. Jeanette?
Yeah, I think just from my background, it's the user. Always be asking why you're creating a product, and not that because you can. We want to make sure it's usable, not just because the technology is there, but what's that technology going to deliver to that user?
Good point. Sharon?
The short and sweet answer is ditto to what John and Jeanette just said. Literally, you've got to jump in, and you have to be a part of the moving economy or the fourth industrial revolution that we're in. You have to get involved. You have no choice. So network, use LinkedIn, join WITI. Those are my rah-rah statements.
We love to hear that. Yes, join WITI.
I would
Zach?
just add, learn to code. Whatever it is. My preference would be to learn how to code by getting a robot and playing around with that. You can do it cheaply with the Raspberry Pi or something, and just try things out and see what breaks. It can be very fun and exciting, and you can learn a lot at the same time. There's also a lot of resources online, obviously, OpenCourseWare from MIT, Project Euler, and a bunch of other open resources for people to learn new things that they're going to need, post-COVID.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And to add on a more personal note, Zach, what you just said, my son got interested in robots when I used to work at iRobot many years ago. And that's when he was 5 years old. He said, "Mom, I'm going to be a roboticist." He is a roboticist. I have about 6 robots in my house that he's fixing, building, moving, and he's going to Carnegie Mellon in a few weeks to do his master's in robotics. So, build, fix, all the good stuff.
Tell him to reach out in a couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I will let him know. Thank you for that. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here. John, Sharon, Jeanette, Zach, it was a phenomenal conversation. I'm sure we could be going on and on, but thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody. And as David said before, check out WITI.com for a lot of our events that are coming up. Call us if you have any questions. But stay safe, stay happy, and we hope to see you at one of our next events. Thanks again for joining.
I can add one thing, Parna.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. We are starting a new program with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to get more women, underrepresented groups involved in the patent process. So if anybody's interested in speaking, participating, even coaching, look for information about that. I just wanted to mention it.
Good program. Good idea.
Very cool.
Great, thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
David, I have somebody for you on that front. Sorry, I know you're trying to end, but David,
No, that's fine.
reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I have somebody to connect with on the patents.
Sylvia? Okay, great.
Thanks.
Anybody has anything else to add before I shut down?
Yeah, Barry Rubin from Damco. I just want to say thank you, Parna, for inviting me to this event and introducing me to WITI. Thank you, and thank you, David.
You got it. All right. Anybody else have anything to say?
This is Sam. I want to say thank you to Sharon for coming into WITI, and I look forward to buying my first drone in August.
Oh.
Very cool.
On the beach, a small one.
I may have a drone kit, Sam, I'm going to give you when I see you, from leftovers.
Okay.
From our events.
That works.
Everybody, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Parna. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.